Hi folks, welcome to Wednesday. I hope you're having a good day. I've just been thinking about this OCR decision. I think the biggest danger to mortgage rates is the prospect of a free spending government that would take us back through the cycle of inflation and interest rates that have hurt people so badly. That's why it's important we stay the course and control government spending so people's mortgage rates stay low.
What feedback have you had from any of your coalition colleagues about the topic of your State of the Nation around smaller government?
Oh, actually very positive. I think it's something that's hard to disagree with. You ask yourself, how can such a small country have such a large government? I've had a few people around the hall say, good work on Sunday. So
Everyone's positive, even the ones that would lose their jobs?
Well, of course, nobody knows who that is. I think most people have taken it in the spirit intended. We need a smaller, more efficient government rather than the sort of, I guess, how shall we put it, kind of soap opera politics that some people prefer.
Which of your portfolios do you use?
Yeah, to speak more broadly, do you have it sketched out exactly which ones, do you have a proposal to submit on exactly how you would trim it down?
Yeah, we will release a specific plan of what a smaller, more efficient government would look like, which ministries would be there with which responsibilities, but we'll do that closer to the election. Right now, we don't want to make it about who's in, who's out, show pony politics. What we want is a real mature discussion about how we get a government that is more affordable and more responsive to Kiwis' needs.
Which of your portfolios would you lose? You're one of
well, I don't know if you heard the answer I just gave, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about, is the government really responsive and efficient the way we'd like? If not, let's just talk about the fact it would be better if it was smaller and more efficient. We can get into that at a later time.
You're the only minister who's created a ministry.
Yeah. Is it credible for you to campaign for fewer ministers when you've got 3 associate ag ministers, one of which is an ACT party? Do you need those?
Well, once again, there's no question that every party, including in the previous government and the one before that and the one before that, has had this configuration, which I believe is too large. But if everybody just said, look, we're never going to change... Beg your pardon?
Has there always been 3?
Well, you can get into something as specific as a particular portfolio, but the number of ministers has been in the high 20s, close to 30 ministers for as long as I've been here. What I've taken from being at the centre of government for 2 years is we need to learn from that and change. If no one's prepared to learn and change, we'll keep doing what we've always done, and I think Forrest Gump said something about that.
What about can you put your money where your mouth is and just give up the portfolio?
What do you mean?
The associate ag portfolio. Why is it necessary?
Because once again, you would love to make this about soap opera politics. I want to show that there's a way that we can get a smaller, more efficient government without people questioning their credibility and saying you're not putting your money where your mouth is. Actually, if we can just ask ourselves, do we think what we're doing is working? It hasn't worked actually for decades with different people in power. And so I'm saying, look, here's a way that we could all agree to do it better.
Could one minister look after all of the functions of NBAE as it's currently constituted, or would you probably need to break that up, given it covers energy, immigration?
I think part of the problem with MB is that it does do so many different things, and it would be better if some of those things were, like immigration, I would say that probably actually does deserve a department. That's a thing the government has to do. Who gets into the country, on what grounds? On the other hand, you look at something like health and safety regulation, it's just so completely different. Labour inspectorate, well, that's kind of similar, but then you get them into regulating financial markets. So, there'd have to be a real rethink about MB.
Yeah. The Children's Monitor have done a second review in regards to Malachi Subek, saying has there been enough recommendations made and it's not any safer than Malachi died. Your views on that review?
Well, look, I don't have a specific view on the reviews or the comparison between them. All I know is that until New Zealand gets to the stage where we live up to our rhetoric when it comes to protecting children, then we're failing. And Malachi has become a very sad emblem of that national failure.
Do you think Minister Chua is doing enough in order to try and implement some of those recommendations from the political report?
Look, I think Minister Chua, Karen Chua, our Minister for Children, is the most caring Minister for Children we've ever had. She's the only one that's visited all 58 facilities of Oranga Tamariki. No one has done that before, and yes, she is implementing the parts of that review, but any review that comes out, the people that write the review will always have a slightly different idea of what should be done than the people who actually have to do the work, and so you never get a perfect match between the things being reviewed and the other and the things we've done.
Are you saying that don't take much notice?
No, I didn't say that at all. I just said the person that writes the review is going to have one list, and the person that has to do the work is going to look at that and say, yep, we'll do that, no, we won't do that, and that's where you get to a result.
Do you think that Pharmac should make further cost savings in terms of funding more cancer drugs, and do you have a sort of specific target in terms of Pharmac's cost savings?
Yeah, look, I don't have they're doing it all the time, so it's not should they make further, they're already doing it. Do I have a target? No, I don't, because it's very opportunistic. If they see that a drug that used to cost a fortune becomes a generic and there's a more affordable alternative, they can shift to that in consultation with patients and get to a better outcome. But I can't predict how often that'll happen or how much they could save. So if I set a target, it would just be a made-up target.
And where are things at with the surcharge ban? A different topic, but where are things at with that?
Well, the government said it would do it. We've listened to the very strong feedback. I've in particular listened to small business people saying we get $1 million through our card system. 2% fee we have to eat would be $20,000. Our small business can't afford that, and that's why the conversations carry on.
So are there disagreements though in Cabinet about that?
Well, if there were disagreements in Cabinet, I would have to tell you that Cabinet is confidential, but we are listening as a government to small business, and we'll get to a better place.
How confident are you in the surcharge ban?
Well, I support government policy, but I also note that there's been a select committee report which has been listening. Paramjit Parmar has put forward a suggestion that they should be able to have the surcharges if they offer a free alternative such as FPOS. Maybe that's where we end up, who knows?
Is the new Ministry of Cities, Environment, Regions and Transport?
MCIT,
Yeah,
yep.
MCIT. Is that an example of what you'd like to do in terms of slimming?
Yeah, absolutely, because fundamentally building houses and the infrastructure connecting them and doing the consenting to make sure that they work with the environment surrounding them, that's the kind of thing that I think we need to do more of. One purpose, one minister, one budget, one accountability, then you can actually drive efficiency. Whereas when you've got 4 different cooks in the kitchen, sometimes you spoil the broth a little bit, and I think that's what's happened with infrastructure and housing.
I know this is kind of petty, but are you
Oh yeah, okay, well, ask him your petty questions. Hey Joe.
Are you able to say why you didn't wear a bike helmet?
Well, I actually I had completely forgotten, and I actually left my bike and didn't ride home because I realised I didn't have my helmet. But it was just that I just got so excited by the feeling of freedom through my hair that I didn't realise I didn't have it. So I feel very bad.
Are you still supporting a change of the rules in that? I know you asked the Ministry for Regulation to look into it last year.
No, we asked them what they thought of it, and they said you should probably keep it. So that's dead and buried a long time ago. But no, I literally got to work and thought, shit, where's my helmet?
Thank you.
So
housing anticipation, plan change 120.
Yep.
In terms of the official public formal feedback process, that hadn't actually concluded before the government indicated that they were going to make changes. So clearly there's, the Prime Minister referenced feedback and things like that, and you've spoken about speaking to some of your constituents, that sort of thing. Do you think it's appropriate that, quite a significant change, something that would potentially require a law change, occurs without actually hearing the formal feedback through?
Well, as I understand it, there's been about 10,000 people who have given feedback through the planning process.
Correct, but none of those submissions had been seen when the Prime Minister indicated that the changes were going to be made.
Well, I understand that, but there's a very, very clear point that the number of houses stipulated by Parliament is just too high, and so the government, I believe, will reduce it, but that's up to other ministers to announce if and when it happens.
But Cabinet made that decision, right? You were part of, I assume, that decision. Why wasn't it raised then, as opposed to after it was then talked about and now?
Frankly, because Auckland Council started preparing the maps last April, we voted on the number 2 million in Parliament, and they released the maps the next week. If the council had been transparent about what 2 million actually looked like, we probably would have got a different result in Parliament. We ain't going to make that mistake again.
Okay, so in terms of what is happening now, though, the council's paid $3 million for this consultation process. Is it a waste of money?
Well, let's let the Minister for Housing talk about the details of what happens next. It's not my announcement to make, but what I can be absolutely clear on is people in Auckland are sick and tired of being dictated to. They want some relief, and the government's going to bring it.
Relief from what?
Relief from being treated like they're just living on a map that gets coloured in by planners. They want some respect, and that's what they're going to get.
Which Aucklanders are you speaking about?
Well, pretty much all the ones I talk to. Doesn't matter which part of the city you're in. You want to see more homes get built, but in a way that's coordinated with infrastructure and affordable. You don't want to see this colouring in pencil approach where planners just colour in a map like it's Sim City. It's actually a place where people live.
Is this about winning the election? Is this about winning votes?
Well, actually, everything politicians do should reflect the desires of the people who pay the taxes. That's called democracy. So it's pretty difficult to say that you can't. If I told you that we were going to ignore the wishes of our constituents and do whatever we liked, hopefully you'd be opposed to that too.
I guess the concern was that there are obviously some voices that might have been louder than others, or some voices who managed to, speak to you or the Prime Minister or whoever it might be, that then was like, okay, we should probably make a change, right? So some voices might have been louder than others, but didn't go through, or the formal feedback didn't have an opportunity to be heard, right? Those voices, I assume, would have also
my job as a politician is to hear and understand what the people in the community want and make decisions on their behalf. If I get it wrong, they vote me out. That's democracy. And I get I find it a bit tiresome when people say, well, there's some official consultation process that a tiny fraction of people, remember 10,000 out of 1.7 million have submitted to. Actually, it's the job of people who are elected to understand what people want and reflect what they want in their decisions.
You got some stick for the swimming pools comment.
No, I didn't.
You did?
No.
There was some criticism in the House, but I think you brushed it off, no doubt.
I just...
All I mean is that particular comment, right?
I mean, let's be clear. You're referring to a member of the Green Party who couldn't read, who actually completely misrepresented what I said.
Understood. But all I mean is that when you see a headline like that in the Herald, I'm more referring to the fact that particular comment was made the headline, right? That this becomes an issue.
Well, I mean, you're from the fine organisation of RNZ. I mean, surely you don't want to take responsibility for misquotation by Green Party MPs and clickbait headlines by the New Zealand Herald.
I guess what I'm saying is, are you concerned that it becomes a discussion or a debate between people who have swimming pools and people who need houses?
No. No, because if you take my quote in its full context, I said people want intensification, but they're concerned of the impact on their quality of life, and that's true wherever you go in the world.
Who gets to determine in terms of quality of life for who? Is that being applied?
Well, you're assuming it's a zero-sum game. I would make the argument that we need to get houses built faster and cheaper, but the thing that's holding us back from that is not zoning, it is the provision of connections and consents and the funding of infrastructure and the consenting of infrastructure, all of which the government is fixing. I think the zoning is a red herring, but if you get it wrong, then yes, people's development patterns do rub up against each other and they don't like it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Howdy.
Can I just quickly, get you on dogs?
Dogs, yes.
Yeah, dogs, as in the, sorry.
These are the attacks?
Yes, the attacks.
Yeah.
Do you think there should be harsher penalties for dog owners who don't look after their dogs?
Look, I actually am very sympathetic to that idea. I've just been dealing with a constituency case where there was a dog that attacked somebody in Epsom, so I'm getting up to speed with things I didn't previously know about around animal control. I guess a lot of us don't spend time thinking about it. So yes, I think there's a good case that if your dog does serious harm to someone, then how is that different from hurting them in other ways with other things?
So do you think they should be... Winston Peters has just said that they should face the same penalties as manslaughter. Would you agree? If the dogs kill someone?
Well, there is a logic to that, but when you start messing around with criminal law, you do want to think very, very carefully. I wouldn't want to make that up in a media interview. Thank you.